I was just taking a quick look at this new Jackery Explorer 500 version 2. So yeah, we finally get a new, smaller Jackery. They've been focusing on the larger home backup size power stations recently, right? So this is interesting for a couple of reasons. The first reason is this new design. So I'm so happy to see this. You know, we got rid of the big orange panel, right? That like every Jackery has. It just stands out. It's an eyesore, right? It draws unnecessary attention. So yeah, they've replaced it with these little orange lines that, if you remember, we first saw on the Jackery 240D, the DC model. And I was wondering, are they going to actually have this design on any of their larger power stations? That would be awesome. Well, we didn't have to wait very long. So, this new look is great, but what about the specs? What about the specs? They're saying that this is the lightest of its kind and the strongest in its class. Well, I don't know. I don't know. That doesn't really seem like that's true, does it? I mean, it's just like the old 500, by the way. It's still a 500-watt inverter, and the capacity is actually a little bit less. But there are some other improvements here, right? Actually, there's a lot of improvement. I mean, let's be honest. There's a huge number of improvements here because the old Jackery 500 was one of the oldest power stations that you could still buy. Like, they really haven't updated that thing in years. It's really weird. One of the only NMC power stations that you can still buy brand new, in fact, from any brand. And that's where, the competition, most of them have a more powerful inverter. And so there's the Pecron, 500 LFP, which has a 600-watt inverter. And the Bluetti AC50B actually has a 700-watt inverter, and it has that voltage reduction feature, which will allow you to power, some more powerful appliances that are resistive loads. And this is kind of the size class that you want to have that feature, right? A lot of power stations advertise that even when they have big inverters, and it's kind of useless. Now, of course, Jackery doesn't do that feature. And then another power station that you might consider is in this size class is the EcoFlow River 3 Plus, if you expand it to the smaller extra battery. And it's not going to be nearly as smaller as compact because you're combining two products, but it is, a cableless stacking system. So, and you can always detach the extra battery and then have something actually even smaller and more portable than this new 500 version 2. So yeah, we'll consider that a competitor as well. Now, another competitor, actually the main competitor for the Jackery 500 over the years was from Goal Zero, the Goal Zero 500X. And it's kind of interesting that product had basically the same form factor as this new version 2 Jackery 500. That was kind of like the big difference, right? The old Jackery 500 was kind of real big and bulky. And the Goal Zero Yeti 500X was literally like half the size with the same folding handle. So now, Goal Zero doesn't make that one anymore. In fact, they don't make any power stations anymore. They went out of business, if you haven't heard. So yeah, I would compare it to their new Yeti 500 LFP, but there's no point. And another interesting thing to note about this new 500 version 2 is there's actually a 600 version 2 as well. Basically the same product, the same case, all the same specs, except it's got a little bit more battery capacity. And as far as the batteries go, 6,000 life cycles on this. Now, that is to 70%, so they're kind of inflating the number here, right? And the charging specs are, they're okay. I mean, 1.3 hours for the full charge, 52 minutes to 80%. And then 200 watts from solar. They are using that 80-20 input, and there's only one of those inputs, unlike some of the bigger Jackeries that have two. But now this is exciting because this is an upgrade. So the UPS mode, Jackery finally is giving us a 10 milliseconds UPS. And they say this thing is super quiet now too, 25 decibels. So yeah, whether you're sleeping next to it, whether you got it, at your desk by your computer, you're not going to notice this thing. And by the way, they do say if you are using this for UPS and you got it, plugged into the grid, it's actually got built-in surge protection now. So up to 3,000 volts, 1,000 joules. And then just, a few last little things to mention here is there's no app with this unit, which is kind of a surprise, right? No Bluetooth, no Wi-Fi. But sometimes this can be a good thing, right? I mean, some people don't want all of those receivers running. And if that's you, this could actually be more appealing. It keeps it simple too, right? It keeps it simple. And another interesting thing is the fact that this LED light does get the frosted lens. So a lot of times on the lower end Jackeries, they don't give you that frosted lens, right? It truly is just like a flashlight. And then the last thing to mention here is, and this is kind of related to the fact that there's no app, is there's this new energy saving switch. This is all new. We've never seen this on a Jackery before. And this is kind of a good idea. So you don't have to go into the app, or you don't have to do some secret button pressing method to kind of change that setting, right? Because a lot of times you don't want this thing to shut off on you, right? If you're powering something like a 12-volt fridge, or just whatever, if you don't want it to shut off unexpectedly, you want to keep it going. Yeah, this is a good idea. Now the only thing I don't like about this is the fact that it looks like it really sticks out there, right? It's going to be easy to switch it back and forth, yes, but it almost looks like too easy, right? It looks like it might get bumped into a different setting. So yeah, this is interesting. After all these years, we finally get a new 500 model. And all those years were really, this is like the Jackery 500 versus the Goal Zero 500X. And that was like that was the biggest topic in like portable power stations, wasn't it? And it's just kind of funny that now the Jackery looks like that 500X. But the big difference is, Jackery's still in business.